And for our ice layer, we kind of have to do the reverse of this. So we want to render only the ice, and we will make our hand and snow geometry invisible. So we want to affect the visibility for them, because if we were to change their matte options, the geometry would still obscure our ground geometry. So we don't want that, but we do want them to affect the shadows and other lighting information. So let's go ahead and I will just duplicate this layer. So we also have a few of these AOVs that we will need. Let's rename this to Ice Ground 01. And let's go to the Objects tab. And like I said, we want the reverse of this, and we want to affect the visibility. So let's get rid of these here for now. And we want our eyes to be rendered as normal, but our hand and our snow, we want to have different options. So we will grab these, Control C, and let's paste them in Force Visibility. And now we will need to create our visibility parm. So let's go in the OBJ tab, and let's do another null here, and this will be our V's parms. And let's go in the Redshift OBJ. Inside the visibility, we will simply turn off primary ray visible. So let's go ahead and point to this null, grab this, and assign it over here as visibility params. So I'll just paste this here, and let's see the result that we get if we select this render op. So this is what happens. We have our ground, and let's maybe preview a different frame. We have the ground and all of the information that we need, and we can sort of imagine that the snow geometry and the hand geometry is in this scene, but they're not visible. But we can see that they are affecting the shadows and the light. And when we will add our snow layer on top, we will recreate the original render that we had. But now we will be able to adjust these layers individually, and we will also be able to add our fish particles a lot easier. So hopefully all of this will make more sense when we get to the Nuke compositing part. Now, because we are going to add our glowing cracks in Nuke, we don't really need the emission for these cracks to be as strong over here. So let's go back up and let's go inside our ice material, and let's just reduce our emission. We still want some emission in order to get a more physically accurate result, but we are going to exaggerate this effect a little bit in Nuke. So let's check our AOVs, and for this we are not, so let's go in the output tab. We are probably not gonna use the CryptoMatte pass and the volume passes as well. We won't be needing those because we don't have any volumes for this, but we can keep the diffuse GI specular and all of this, and probably we can get rid of the subsurface scattering since we don't have the hand in this layer. So we can just go ahead and render all of these out. And now we can go ahead and render to disk. So this will be our ice layer. Let's go ahead and create our snow particles layer, so our flying snow. And we can start with a fresh render up for this, and this will be our snow particles 01. And let's go in our OBJ tab and let's set up this object node. So let's drop a geo here, and this will be RNDR snow PRT. Let's go inside our effects node and let's look for the node that we need, which is going to be, let's see, time shift, this one over here. So let's drop down a null so we can point to this, and this will be out snow PRT. Let's grab this and let's assign it in our list, in our force objects, and let's get rid of candidate objects, and let's also bring in our sunlight for this. So let's just grab it from over here and paste it in our force lights, get rid of candidate lights, and we're gonna need to create a material for this. So let's go up and let's create another RS material builder. This will be snow PRT, and I think for starters I will just leave all of the default settings here. Maybe I will just make the roughness, I will just increase the roughness a little bit more, and let's see what the defaults will give us. I don't think we have to really spend a lot of time on this, so let's go up and let's assign it to our, let's first grab this node and let's paste it in our render object node. So let's do an object merge here and bring our particles, and let's set the particle render options here in the Redshift OBJ tab, in the particles, render object as particles, and let's also reduce the global scale multiplier to 0.1, and let's assign this snow material that we created. So let's assign this here. And we can now do a test render for this. And here we have it. And we can see that by default, most of these default settings actually work pretty nicely, I would say. One thing that we have to do here is obscure our snow with all of the geometry. So again, we will have to, let's go in the OBJ tab and we will grab our snow and our ice and hand. Let's Control C and we will paste this also in our object list here. Let's paste this over and we will need to set their matte options as well. So we will also paste the same list over here in our force matte, and we are going to use the same alpha matte that we used in our snow main. So we can just grab this node from here. So our matte params. Let's grab this and let's assign this here. So now all of the snow and the hand and everything should be obscuring our snow particles. Okay, so now we also have the obscuration as well. And for this render layer, we can go in the Redshift render tab and we can actually disable global illumination. And for this layer, we won't be needing any AOVs, so I think this is good to go as it is. We can render to disk. And one final layer that we will need to create is going to be this glow layer here. So this is a special separate path that I created. So what I did to create this was create a separate material for our eyes that's fully emissive and just use that to light up the entire scene. So we get some bounce lighting on our volume for the snow and also our subsurface scattering. So let's start with a fresh render ROP so I can explain this. We will drop a new ROP and let's rename this to snow glow. And let's go to our OBJ tab and we are going to need the snow, the ice and our hand. But because we want to change the material, we already have a material assigned for this render ice geometry and we want to change this. I'm just gonna go ahead and just duplicate this and rename this to render ice glow, and we are going to create a new material for this ice. So let's drop down an RS builder and let's rename this to snow or rather ice glow matte, and we will step inside. And here what I want to do is just simply add some emission to the whole geometry. So we will set this emission to a value of 10 and we are going to use a blue color, and we also want to make sure that we have a little bit of white in this. Okay, so let's start with something like this and we can adjust further. We are going to assign these materials, so let's assign this to our ice glow. We will replace our original material with this ice glow matte, and now we are going to grab the snow, the ice glow and our hand. Let's assign these in our list. So let's go over here, assign this in our list, and we are not going to use any lights for this. So because we are removing this, let's remember that we have to go inside the globals tab and we have to disable default light. Let's also bring in the camera and let's check the default behavior that we will get if we preview this. So our snow glow, and this is what happens. Now we can see that this is actually a pretty cool effect as it is, but again I only want this to affect this portion here. So we are going to have to scale our ice material, or rather our emission, with our color attribute from the ground. So let's do an RS point attribute, grab our CD, and then we can plug this inside the emission color. And since this is black and white, we will have to do an RS ramp in between. And let's make this, let's use the same blue that we used earlier. So now if I press play, we should only have emissiveness over here. So this is the result that we are after. Now probably this is too much, so let's scale this down, set the weight to a value of 2. And if I go to the out tab here and go inside the AOV manager, let's add the AOVs that we will need. So we will need the light information for our subsurface scattering, and we are also going to need the volume lighting as well. So if I hit play and check out my AOVs, we will have the SSS. So we have the glow here for the subsurface scattering, and for our volume we will have this nice glow layer. So we can simply plus these on top of our comp to get some really cool glow effects. And also we can add the GI here as well. So this will be mainly for the ground. Let's check if this works. So if I preview the GI, we also have a little bit of this over here. Maybe we can increase the emission scale here. Let's make this bigger, because we can always scale this back down in Nuke. So we have the SSS, we have the volume, and then we have the GI. so for the ground itself. And we can simply render this out as it is and then shuffle out the AOVs that we need and just plus them on top. So this will be the final layer that we need. And also I forgot to set up a very important AOV for the ground. So if we go in the ice ground, let's go to this render. We will also want to export the UV information for this layer, so we can use the UV coordinates to map different effects like different noises, and then it's going to follow the geometry and the animation. So we can set this up. In order to export the UV, we will have to create a shader in the shop network. So in the shop context over here, let's drop a redshift network and let's rename this to UV. And inside here, we will use vector, let's see, rs vector user data. Let's bring this out, and the attribute name will be UV. So let's connect this to our surface, and then I can go up and grab this and go back in the out tab. Inside the outputs here, let's add our, let's hit the plus and let's add a costume layer. And let's rename this to UV. You can give this any name you want. And in this costume tab, let's assign the default shader to look for this shop shader that we created, so our UV. And if I play, let's check if this works in our AOVs. And we can see that this is correct. Now, as it is right now, it's just a full yellow color, so it's not really informative. But we can also go to the, let's go to the cogwheel here and to the pixel. And if we look for the UV options here, as I sample different values, we can see that we get different coordinates in our RGBA. So this is all we need to know in order to tell that it's working. So make sure that you also add this UV layer to your ice ground texture. And now we can start compositing in Nuke.